Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. Marianne Rutz founded Rutz Consulting over 20 years ago, and she has advised companies such as Hertz, Thomas Cook, Ralph Lauren and Banco Santander. She's based in Stirling in Scotland. Her focus is operational excellence for contact centres, and she also hosts a podcast titled The Operational Excellence Show. That's probably one to check out after you finish this, because her latest episode is also on working from home. In this special episode focused on helping managers to get as much information as possible about a work-from-home strategy, I asked Marianne to tell me about some of the problems of trying to shift very quickly to a work-from-home strategy, like many companies are trying to do right now. Okay, Marianne, thank you for taking part in the podcast. You've developed operational excellence frameworks that include teams working remotely. Can you tell me about some of the difficulties that your clients had when they were trying to integrate a work-at-home model?
Well, I think initially it's really mostly about overcoming some hurdles around recruiting, training, trust building, feedback. So how do you run a remote floor? And in particular around recruitment, I think when you go and you do mass recruitment, you get 100 people to see and you hire at the end maybe 10. And you have them see, you have seen them, you know who they are, and you get to feel. However, when you do recruit for home workers, you may get an application from somewhere at the end of the world, and you still need to go through the recruitment process. But your profile, what you really are looking for, has to be much more clear. The shifts have to be very clear from the get-go. The overall profile that you're hiring, that it just needs to be much more focused and much clearer. So you have a little bit less, I wouldn't say you can, you have to be specific, very specific. Training, some accounts find it really difficult to deliver training online. It's only the last maybe couple of years where there was some online training came about. So you need to become creative. How can you train? So for example, what we have done just recently for a client where we hired remotely and we brought the training into one of their stores close to the proximity of a high number of applicants and new employees. And what we learned from that was an excellent experience because it created a huge amount of brand loyalty. So people just felt the brand in the store, and from there they would never go into the store again. They would just work remotely and provide the service. The trust issue, I tend to tell my clients, it works both ways. You need to build trust with your workforce, and the workforce needs to build trust with you. That doesn't happen overnight, so you need to kind of prepare for that. And the feedback and the stand-ups and the huddles, how do you actually work your day, should in theory not be any different than what you would be doing on the floor. But when you have a remote workforce, you must do it at the time where you agreed you would do it. Mm-hmm. So this short notice, we have a team huddle at 10. No, today we have it at 10:30. Doesn't really work that well. There must be much more discipline involved from the leadership team. And that's what usually they say, I don't know whether I can do that. So I think these are the areas. Yeah. So that flexibility point is interesting. And clearly a lot of companies are having to do this very quickly. Certainly all of the contact centers are putting their people at home almost overnight. And there's a lot of room for different mistakes here, especially things like data privacy. So, if you had to focus on making it work really quickly because of a crisis, then what would the sort of top 3 areas be that you would focus on? Well, the first one is obviously the whole IT piece, starting with the equipment right through to encrypting your data and give a secure environment. That's the first one, certainly. The second one that I always focus on with home workers is the quality control. What I've learned, even in real life, when you go into a peak season, you have hundreds of calls. Usually the first big bit that falls over is quality, because you take your quality advisors and get them onto the front line, which is a risk. If you do home working as we do now, quality becomes even a bigger risk. So, and you need to reinforce the fact that there's certain laws that you need to adhere to if you are a FCA, work under FCA regulations. You need to be very clear what that means from a quality aspect. And to instill that into your workforce, you need to just do that much more rigorously. It comes down that you have to dial up your discipline rather than dialing it down. Although initially you think, oh, actually, we pick it back up in a month or so. Then the third one really is around workforce management and scheduling. Because if you allow people to work from home, they usually want that for either work-life balance, or now where there is a crisis and things have completely changed, you need to take that into account. For example, people may have to go shopping and it takes them much longer now in the current circumstances. So therefore, from a workforce management point of view, you need to have a little bit more flexibility, maybe a little bit more, take a bigger interest in who works when, because at the end of the day, in the current situation, you also have to show a huge amount of compassion and empathy around what's happening to people, and you don't want to make it even more difficult for them, yet you need to control the service you are delivering. So I think these are the three areas that I would certainly put a heavy focus on.
Yeah, and that's interesting. You mentioned about having to schedule more time, because I need to go to my bank this afternoon, and I just walked past and I could see a line outside. So,
And certain banks have their opening hours in the UK are from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So after 2 o'clock, I can't actually physically go. It's closed. And we need to make allowances for that, or somebody does have to do the shopping for an elderly neighbor. So for our workforce managers, I think it's a massive challenge to have that balance of service delivery and at the same time allowing people to do things that they really wouldn't do, but now they have to.
Yeah. And if you have a team of people that's used to working in a certain way, like a contact center, like a team of people that are normally based together in an office, how do you create a sort of functioning team where they're all disparate and just all working from home?
I thought it was an interesting question, because at the end of the day, in my world, there's no difference to good team management in the one-on-one contact center world. So personally, I really use again, comes down to operational discipline and operational excellence. So I make, if you wish, my team managers planning their days out the day before. I make them to tell me who they are spending coaching time with tomorrow, at what time they're planning to do that. And I really encourage them to use these tools. Everybody has a diary. You now need to really diarize who you want to speak with and when. But on the other side as well, it's all about, get them connected every day, everybody in a one-on-one and in a kind of a group scenario, and make sure that you really connect with them on an emotional level, just as much as, on the factual, these are the KPIs from yesterday, here is where we need to improve, etc. So that should still happen. And at the same time, you probably have to show much more compassion on a call, and that's probably not the easy bit to do. So there was one team meeting I was on a week ago, and we were just discussing that. How do we now show compassion? Because we can't just, put our arms around somebody that's maybe having a hard time. And one lady came up and she said, "Oh, let's just do a heart shape with the fingers." And it worked. It actually just worked, and it created this human connection. And I think that's important, that the coaching is not starting to become an exercise, but that you use it to improve the performance, to help points and bring points across people may be unsure about, but also allow that element of one-on-one discussion. Hey, what's actually going on in your world just now? Tell me about it. And with that, you can create a team environment, although everybody works somewhere else.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was also thinking about recognition as well. How
Yeah.
do you, especially public recognition, where you want to lift someone up in front of the team, how can you do that kind of thing?
I think there's a number of things. You can, for example, create a certificate and share the screen and say, here is Johnny, has done a great job on MPS last week, 98%, well done, and share it. You can certainly do handwritten thank you cards. I think right now I find it is a great opportunity actually to go and take pen and paper and just write a little thank you note that you can do. What we did a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I think it was already, we did our actual brown bag lunch virtually. So in other words, what we would have done in the environment, we would have sat in the boardroom, we had the brown bag lunch. I just said to the guys, okay, bring your own lunch. But unfortunately, this time round, you have to bring your own. But let's just do the brown bag lunch anyway. And the response was, oh, I thought we wouldn't be doing this. Now more than ever, we really need to do this. And then obviously there's the normal, as you would normally do. You can send vouchers. You can send an Amazon voucher via email. You can do that recognition piece. You just need to think about, how do I make it visible?
Yeah.
So that the other in the team can see it.
Yeah. And I was also thinking then about the idea of the single voice, because certainly when you have a contact center and you'll normally have a team representing a certain brand, maybe a bank or a telco, and they have to sort of hit that tone, that right voice. How do you kind of manage that across a remote team?
Do you know, when I learned this, I was 20 odd years ago, I was working for a big yellow car rental company. And what our manager made us do at the time, he always spoke about the vision, values and the mission of the firm. And I adapted that a couple of years ago when I started to do my own work. I said, well, what I do every time to get that brand ethos across, I use the client's values. So, and what I mean by that, I would recommend that people go and think, what can I share in a team meeting, for example, that represents the client's values? I would talk about it. I would have had accessories to that respect to just demonstrate this is what we do and this is who we are. Now, one of the clients I did some work with, which was a clothing company, kind of a high-end clothing retail company, they gave out every quarter of the season, they gave out their own clothing to the contact center staff. When it turned over, we had them in the center. And I would now say, look, let's put an identifier together. Either we all wear a scarf or we all wear a baseball cap, whatever it may be, that represents the brand we are working for. Because you need to be creative. You need to think differently to bring that across. And also read what's in the paper. How are they doing? What's the client's firm doing? Have they done something great now with COVID-19? So Lufthansa recently, they spent all their chocolate Easter bunnies and brought them out to care homes. That kind of information I will bring into the team meeting on a daily basis, because that's the brand.
Yeah, and that's interesting as well then. Would that even filter into the kind of personality that you're hiring? Maybe an airline or a bank or a video game company, they all need a different kind of person to be picking up the phone.
I think what becomes more and more important anyway in the entire industry is where there is so much self-service now around. When somebody gets to talk to an advisor, the advisor has to be the brand and the expert. So I think the times where you could just literally hire anyone for any job is probably slowly but surely that's gone within the industry, because by the time somebody speaks to me, they speak to me as I am Lufthansa, or I am Ralph Lauren, or I am Santander Bank. And they expect this expert behavior, the expert knowledge, and really 100% brand identity, because they've already gone through hoops. until they speak to me. Yeah, they have already done the chatbot, they have already done the email, they have already rebooted their laptop 110 times and it doesn't work. So when they get to me, they need to get me as an expert.
Yeah, and that means that a lot more people are just asking Alexa or asking Google. Then they're checking online on the company website. So by the time they get to the advisor, they really expect a domain expert. So
totally. Yeah. But maybe it's not just about the recruitment, then, Mark. It's also about the training that you are providing. Yeah, your onboarding and then your subject matter training has to be much more specific. It cannot be a kind of a one glove fits all customer service training. That's gone. You need to know. And if I buy an expensive Ralph Lauren jacket with, and I pay £500 for it, and I need to ring the contact center, I want to know whether this jacket has an inside pocket, yes or no. I don't want to hear, go and check on the internet.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please take a moment to review the podcast because this helps other listeners to find it. And if you have any suggestions, then get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm @Mark Hillary with 2 L's, or just search Google for Mark Hillary.